why, but they also asked us if we had licenses. And of course, I had my Iowa driver's license. I still had my military driver's license, whether it was good or not, but my U.S. Army Europe Army driver's license. And I had my international driver's license that I had got when I was in the Army.
So you were legal,
so
you were legal anywhere. You were legal to drive anywhere.
Correct.
And I guess you had to have your passport too, because there was no EU, and every time you traveled into a new country, you had to show your passport, I'm guessing.
Well, correct. But I forgot to tell you that when we met them and they asked us if we wanted to do it. And I'm not even sure if we went to the Iranian embassy or they just took our passports for us and went and they had to put the automobile we were driving in our passports, but it's all in Farsi.
Oh,
so you can't read it at all. I can read we got our visa on the 27th of August, 1968.
Okay.
And that I could read, and it was for a 3 month period. And then the whole page is in Farsi where it tells about the Peugeot 404.
Okay.
And each person had to have that in their passport.
And that was the documentation that was necessary to bring the cars into the country.
Yes, they themselves. I didn't know this at the time, but found out later when we got to Tehran. He owned a car dealership or was in partnership with somebody else in a car dealership in Tehran.
Okay.
They were allowed to bring one car in a year, 100% duty on that car.
Wow.
Whatever they paid, it was 100% duty when they got to Tehran.
Wow.
Anyhow, we had it in the car. We had that. Now, when we, I lost my train of thought here. Getting back to the travel, when we left Yugoslavia,
mm-hmm.
we went into Bulgaria.
Okay. Now that at that time was a strong Soviet bloc country. You didn't have problem getting into Bulgaria with your U.S. passport.
No, we did not, except for my long hair. They wouldn't let me in.
Really?
So I went down in another sit down strike. But finally, one of the Iranians, he just come up behind me with a scissors and took a big chunk out of my hair.
And then that satisfied the border guards.
No, then my female friend, she ended up cutting my hair up around my collar, off of my collar.
Okay.
And then that satisfied the border guards.
What did they think you were Did they think you were some troublemaking hippie or something?
Well, yeah, I had a headband and all that stuff on.
Okay.
There was a French guy that come through there that had twice as much hair in his head long as I did, but they were good with France, so that didn't matter. It was just because I was an American.
Okay, so they were just giving you trouble because of your nationality.
Right.
Got it.
But then we went to Sofia, Bulgaria, and that was so sad. That was it was unbelievable.
Had they had not yet recovered from the war?
Yes, but not really. I mean, it was a Soviet satellite country, and I mean, they were really suppressed. And in Sofia, the capital, the people. Well, let me explain this to you. We'd be walking around looking at the city. We got to spend a day in Sofia. We got to spend a day in Belgrade, or we got to spend different times or so many hours. They would let us tour the city and stuff while I don't know what they did.
Okay.
And the people who took care of the parking meters and the little carts that had dry ice in them, and they sold ice cream out of them. You would be standing there and they go, don't look. I want to speak to you, but don't look at me because the secret police, they'll arrest us. So we had to pretend we was looking at a building and talking to each other.
Okay.
And they would tell you their story, which they had been graduates of the American College in Sofia before the war.
Okay.
And they had killed a lot of their friends that were teachers and, educated people. And the ones they let live, they gave them jobs like this. And it was really pitiful. It was so sad. They spoke perfect English. They wanted to know about the Western world. And that's why you'd stand there then looking away from them like you were looking at a building, talking to your friend, and that you'd be actually talking to them.
Wow. And all they were looking for is, hey, how are things like on the outside? Because they had no idea because they were in the Soviet satellite country.
They wanted to know. They wanted this to know something, what was going on. It was incredible. It was so sad.
Yeah.
Anyhow, and Bulgaria was really backwards.
More backward than Yugoslavia?
Oh, much more backward than Yugoslavia. You hardly seen any vehicles whatsoever, except now, 2 different times. The first time, after we'd left Sophie, we're traveling towards Turkey, and one of the cars overheated. And so everybody, when the first car pulls off, everybody pull off in a line right behind them and stop.
Okay.
I mean, you see no other vehicles around. Like I said, I was the tail end car.
Okay.
Within a minute, there was a Jeep with 4 soldiers, and I'm not sure, but it had like a 50 caliber mounted on it.
Really?
And one of the guys manning that. They would pull up behind us. They would want to know what we were doing. And then they would sit there and watch the whole time until they got the car that was overheating filled back up with water. And as soon as we pulled out onto the road and started going, they pulled out, and then I would watch in my rearview mirror, and then they would turn around and go back the other way. Again, in Bulgaria, farther into the country, one of the cars had a flat tire. Again, with it, no traffic, no sign of any military, nothing. There's a Jeep behind us, same 40 caliber. I mean, I know it couldn't have been the same Jeep because we had went hundreds of miles.
Right.
And there was this Jeep again, 4 soldiers, a machine gun mounted on it, and want to know what we were doing, fixing the flat tire. As soon as done, everybody pull out on the road. They'd follow a little ways, turn around, go back the other way again.
Just to make sure that you were there for the reasons that your visas and passports said you were there for.
Well, wanted to know what was happening. So you knew they were watching you all the time.
Right.
They were watching. I don't know how and what. There weren't drones back then and stuff like that, but they were watching.
Well, they could probably hear the vehicles. I mean, if there were no, if there were probably only limited roads that were safe for cars, or I guess acceptable for cars, and they could probably hear you, and they probably said, "Hey, look, these guys are here and they're coming your way." So they probably radioed to their buddies up ahead. I'm sure there were only so many routes through Bulgaria to get to Iran.
Right, it was just the main route.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And did they have the burned out bridges and the bad roads and that from the war yet as well, like Yugoslavia?
Yeah, I believe so. Because we ran across it a few times, and it's what you would do when the bridge wasn't there. You just drive down off the road and through the riverbed, and then up the other side, and away you'd go again.
Okay.
Because it was, like I said, it was in the fall or in the summer, fall.
So the rivers were low.
They weren't even, a lot of times there wasn't no water in them at all.
Right.
And you just drive through them and up the other side, and away you'd keep going. But after that first time when them barrels were in the road, and they never drove at night again. They as soon as it get dark, we'd pull off and somewhere and stop and sleep. Because
the roads had just gotten too bad, and it was not safe.
Right, correct. Because you couldn't see.
Well, and if you run those if you ran those cars into something, they would have trouble selling them in Tehran.
Well, that happened anyway, but that's down the road here.
Okay, so you're through Bulgaria, and your next stop was, you say, Turkey?
Right. We ended in Istanbul, and we got the day to spend to walk around Istanbul. You have the western side and the old side. You know, I should say the new and the old part of Istanbul. and we just walked around and checked out the shops and stuff like that. And
how was Turkey? Had it recovered from the war?
Yeah, it's backwards, I mean, but you didn't see that part of it. You didn't see nothing, no damage or anything from the war. But the taxi cabs in Istanbul were the old 50s Chevrolets mainly.
Really?
And yeah, they had like the 52, 50s, 51s, and they were the taxi cabs. And we're walking in Istanbul. This is on the western side, and this one keeps driving alongside of us. And he's got his body halfway out the back window of the car, the guy that was riding behind her. And he's talking, but we don't know what he's saying. Don't pay no attention to him. So he pulls up about a half a block in front and gets out and walks back to me. Well, the young lady I was walking with, we were holding hands. So he walks up to me and he asked me if he can have her for the evening. And I said, man, get the fuck out of here. He didn't bat an eye. He did not bat an eye. He turned, there was the two Frenchmen. The one was an 18-year-old boy. He turned to him and asked him if he could have him for the night.
Really? So if he
absolutely.
So if he couldn't have the girl, he'd take the young boy.
He'd take the young boy and never batted an eye. Turned, and the young French guy, he didn't know what he said because he didn't speak no English at all.
Right.
And his French friend told him what he said, and he got so embarrassed and all red. that was that was our first experiment with
wow,
with that thing.
Wow, unbelievable. And then now your girlfriend, she was the only girl in the troop, correct?
Right, and she, like I said, she drove a car too. And then in Turkey, these truck drivers and these 2.5-ton lorries, they would come right at her. We didn't know why. We didn't know this Muslim thing. I had no idea about that women weren't allowed to drive and they're supposed to be completely covered up and all this here crazy stuff. They drive right at her with a truck, and then the last minute they'd swerve. And oh man, it was crazy. It was crazy. But
so back then, Turkey was very Muslim-fied or whatever. That's not the word I want to use, but they were very traditional, like they would be in Saudi Arabia. I mean, right now, Turkey is it's a Muslim country, but it's very secular. It was not that way in 1968.
Well, now it was more than it is now, but now this ain't in Istanbul. This is out in the country.
Okay, so Istanbul is different than the countryside.
Right. You seen women with mini skirts in the western side. You seen no head covers, no lipstick, makeup.
Right.
I mean, you could see all of that in Istanbul. But when we got, like I said, from Istanbul, we went to Ankara.
Okay.
And when we got to Ankara, we all had to go to the train station there, and they loaded all of our cars, the back seats of our cars, with televisions and stereos, electronic equipment. They had shipped from Germany by train to Ankara.
Why didn't they just put it in the back seat of your car from the get-go?
That I don't know, unless it was to do with the money they had to pay, the duties and stuff.
Duties
like
and
that,
tariffs, etc. Sure, maybe it was cheaper to ship it and take delivery of it in Ankara versus Munich.
Correct.
Okay.
Anyhow, that's what we did.
Well, now if the back seat of the car was full of television sets, now where did you sleep?
Well, in the front seats of the cars.
Okay.
I don't know if every car was filled up, but I know mine was. I had a couple TVs and some stereo and stuff, and the young woman, her car had stereo equipment or electronic equipment or electrical equipment in there. And then from Ankara, we went on to Erzurum. And
this is still in Turkey.